This is a story about my grandpa, let's call him Auntie, who was lost in the mountains with his white dog, named Village. Auntie was out herding one winter day. He was driving with his reindeer on the tundra, with his dog running behind him. He was driving near a small lake that has a small hut nearby. When he was driving over the lake, he was surprised by a sudden snowstorm that swept over the tundra. He decided to turn around and drive towards the small hut to seek shelter. He arrived at the hut, tied his reindeer to a tree, and went inside to escape the weather. There he was with his dog, waiting for the storm to stop. Hours went by, and it had turned dark. Auntie decided to stay the night in the hut. He ate some meat before laying down on the small bed that was there. His dog was kept under the bed. The Village had a habit of licking Auntie's hands after a meal, so he put his arm over the edge of the bed so his dog could lick his hand. The next day the storm was still raging on. He knew that he had to stay, or else he could get taken by the fox. He decided to check on his reindeer and see how it was doing. But when he went outside, it wasn't there. The reindeer had escaped, leaving only the leash behind. He walked over to the tree to untie the leash, but he could see that the reindeer had been running back and forth before the track started going towards the tundra. He was annoyed, but not worried. Auntie had skies with him, so he could just use them when he was going to leave. He also had plenty of food with him, so he wasn't stressed. He walked back inside and stayed there for hours, waiting. Each night, they did the same thing. Auntie ate his meal, and Village licked his hand. He had been there for almost a week until one evening the weather was starting to clear up. Auntie looked at the moon and saw a ring around it. He knew that the storm was going to stop. Auntie decided that he would leave in the morning when the weather was clearer. He ate his meal and laid down on the bed, but this time Village was sitting by the door. Auntie said, "Village, come on, go under the bed." But the Village started whimpering and refused to come any closer. Auntie thought it was weird, so he decided to let Village outside for the night. He fell asleep. He was sleeping peacefully when he suddenly felt something wet on his hand. It was something licking his hand. Half asleep, he had forgotten that the dog was outside, and fell back asleep. Then suddenly a cold wind came inside. He woke up to see the door open. Annoyed, Auntie closed the door and went back to sleep. The next morning he woke up. The weather was clear and the sun was shining in through the window. He ate breakfast and packed up his stuff, but when he stepped outside, his bag dropped to the ground and his eyes opened. It was Village, dead in front of the door without any skin at all. He noticed something in Village's mouth. It was a piece of paper, and on it stood, "Humans can also lick your hands." He looked around and saw human tracks leading toward his sled. He walked over and saw that his skies were gone, and they headed towards the white tundra. He took Village and buried him in the woods near the hut. Auntie took his bag and started walking. He decided to start tracking the reindeer tracks, which he could barely see. He walked only 1 kilometer when he spotted something. It was a pair of antlers sticking under the snow. It was his reindeer. It had been butchered, with only the antlers and stomach being left behind. Auntie had to take the antlers with him and started walking. After 6 hours of walking over the tundra, he reached his family, who had been worried. They asked what had happened, and he told them. Days went by, and a relative of Auntie was visiting. He was out searching for someone. The man said, "I'm looking for my cousin." He said he had heard crying in the woods, and after that, he had started acting weird. "He killed my dog and butchered many of our reindeer." One day he had just disappeared before the storm. Auntie said to him he must have encountered the ꜱᴜ밝ᴜ and turned crazy after that. The man was never seen again. It said that whoever lets an ꜱᴜ밝ᴜ run around you 3 times would become crazy or possessed.